impact on a country like Guyana, it's not just the impact in terms of the African Guyanese, it's the impact in terms of the development of the Guyanese society, with the African Guyanese being given the opportunity to play the role corresponding with their abilities and the capacity and the right to be involved.
Yes, and you yourself pointed out at the beginning of this program that people tend to get a bit peeved or edgy when African Guyanese speak out about the issues.
That's why I said we're pro, not anti any other ethnicity.
And I don't see anything African Guyanese have done in Guyana that has not benefited the entire nation. And we could point to the fact that the Amerindians had 2 decades because they had the first decade and everybody recognized not enough was done for them, and they had a second decade. And now it's our turn. And we should acknowledge too that Guyana is the land of 6 peoples, and there might very well be a decade for people of East Indian descent, Chinese descent.
Exactly.
So with that, I would love to urge my other African brothers and sisters, let us come together, put aside our differences, and see how best we can work things out and make the most out of this decade. And let us make our country and our president proud because he has stuck his neck out. And let us show our appreciation by coming together and working hard and putting things together for our future generations, because we don't want to lose any good moment of the rest of this decade, because we don't know how it will be when the other decades, which potentially might come up.
Exactly, and time flies indeed, because this started in 2015, this is 2018. So indeed we need to be doing more, and I'm so happy that this is happening, because so it's not just talk about, oh no, this was the decade, and then at the end of the decade, it goes down in history, and then you say what happened. So I'm really happy about this. Thank you to both of you for coming. Even before, again, I'd like to give both of you another opportunity to talk about anything that you would have missed, and just to remind Guyanese why it is that they should be paying attention to not only this decade, but the work that your council and your assembly will be doing.
Well, I say the one thing we didn't say at the beginning too, that you mentioned the coordinating council. The members of the coordinating council are, we starting with our chair,
Yes.
Professor Alexander. We have Dr. Simpson da Silva. We have Dr. Norman Nigui. We also have Dr. Mark Curtin and myself, Esther Gittens, and we have just employed our CEO, which is Miss Olive Sampson.
Okay, all right, great. Mr. Alexander.
And we are working towards shortly opening our secretariat. And when we do that, then we will have a place to which the public could come and interact as the public at large, and a place from which we'll be operating in pursuit of the objectives of the decade. That is, to ensure that for people of African descent, there is justice, recognition, kind of reversed it, recognition, justice, and development.
Thank you to both of you so very much. And viewers, I can promise you that Facing the Nation will certainly keep track of what is happening, and we will give you the information as we go along. Those of you who are now joining, you missed a great conversation, but of course all is not lost. You can see this conversation before the end of the day, both on YouTube and on Facebook. Thank you so very much to both of you for coming again.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
All right, great. This is Facing the Nation. We'll have more for you coming up on the other side of this very quick break. Thanks very much for staying with Facing the Nation. I'm so happy to have had that discussion. It's very, very refreshing to be talking about the decade for people of African descent and the major role that Guyana is playing. And this is what I always say to you. Sometimes we get so caught up in the hustle and the bustle and at times the scandalous, non-essential things that happen in society, we get so caught up in those things that we forget that there are really other important and significant things happening for us. And I'm happy that the council and the assembly and of course the secretariat, when it's set up, and which should be before the end of this month, I'm happy that one of the things that they're committed to do is take Guyana's history into our schools so that our students, and again, it's not only for students of African descent to understand the role that we played, but for citizens of and students of other ethnicities to understand the role that we played. I mean, all of us, we embrace when there is Amerindian Heritage Month and these sort of celebrations. We embrace it. Even the Indo-Guyanese festivals and so on, we embrace these things. So it's good to have what we have inherited and what we have learned from and what would have contributed to our development as it relates to what came from the community, the Afro-Guyanese community, and we're so very proud of those things. So once again, thank you so very much to Vincent, Alexander, and Esther Gittens for coming. On that note, as we're talking about contributions made by our African descendants, it's and I'm getting a bit edgy here because Guyana has lost an icon. Of course, most of you would have known by now. What I'm going to do is read, because this is very accurate, the statement that came out on behalf of the Ministry of Social Cohesion, of course, and by extension the government of Guyana. We would have lost the son of the soil. He was a calypso icon. For me and for so many, he was more than a calypso icon because, every now and again he was so friendly. He wasn't only a big personality on stage, but he was a big personality in life. And as I said on social media yesterday, I feel fortunate to have known this gentleman. I formally met him at the beginning of my own television career, which would have been back in 2005. And he was so warm and so pleasant. He had so much advice to give because at that time he wasn't only a calypso icon, he wasn't only an on-stage icon, but he himself also was a television personality. Those persons who would have worked at what was GWTV Channel 2, it's now Safe TV. He touched the lives of almost every person that passed through what was GWTV Channel 2, and he always had good advice, and he had a lot to say about how you should be on television, how you should not be, and a very principled person, mind you, fun but principled. And my heart at this time goes out to his relatives, his close relatives, his friends, his children. I have not grieved in that way, but I can't imagine that it's anything easy. So our hearts, thoughts, and prayers go out to them. And of course, for those of you who haven't gotten it by now, I'm talking about the late Geoffrey Phillips. And I'm really annoyed because I see some of the media houses carrying it as Godfrey Phillips. Come on, this is what I talk about. We must learn to celebrate our own, and in celebrating our own, that means we must try to know everything that we possibly can know about them, or at least try to be accurate. His name it's Geoffrey Phillips, not Godfrey Phillips. So I pray that those media houses that are carrying it incorrectly correct yourselves, and it's not difficult to come by this information. I must congratulate the Kaitro News because they had a detailed story on him today, and I got some additional information and that I didn't know existed. But as I said, I'm going to read what came out from the Ministry of Social Cohesion. Of course, it began. Guyana has lost yet another icon with the passing of Calypsonian, the Mighty Rebel. So it's Geoffrey Phillips, aka the Mighty Rebel. Minister of Social Cohesion, Dr. George Norton, on behalf of the administration, meaning the government of Guyana, extended condolences to the family, friends, and fans of the late Mighty Rebel, aka Geoffrey Phillips. Or that should be Geoffrey Phillips, aka Mighty Rebel. The 72-year-old renowned Calypsonian was visited last week by the minister at his residence, where he was resting after suffering a stroke. The Mighty Rebel, known for his witty and sometimes controversial lyrics, holds the record as Guyana's most decorated Calypsonian. So indeed, that is a major achievement, and this is why I'm saying we need to pay attention to our people, the people who leave their footprints in our lives and leave their footprints in the sand, so to speak. Crowned Calypso champion 6 times, His musical career spanned more than 3 decades, with hit songs such as Rebel Don't Sing About That, Desi You're Wrong, and I think Desi You're Wrong is probably the most famous one. Even the very young people would know and be able to sing along to Desi You're Wrong. Another song, Ask the President, Second Hand Man. Well, Second Hand Man was always my favorite. And of course, Little Angie. He was a household name. As a cultural ambassador for the country, the Mighty Rebel toured the United States on 8 separate occasions, performing in New York, Washington, California, Texas, Delaware, and Miami. He has also performed in Canada, Belize, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, Antigua, French Guyana, and Suriname, and several other countries. The Mighty Rebel's singing ability was acknowledged by the state of California, as well as the then mayor of Ottawa, Marianne Dewar, in 1981. That was even before I was born. So the man indeed was a legend. The Calypsonian's melodious voice will definitely be missed by Guyanese and those around the world. The Mighty Rebel will always be remembered for his entertaining and satirical work. So that came from the Department of Public Information, of course, on behalf of the Minister of Social Cohesion, Dr. George Norton. Indeed, certainly he was a son of the soil. And the thing is, I think people started missing him a long time ago, since I can't remember the exact year that he retired from the Calypso stage, but I think people started missing him a long time, way before now. So again, indeed, we pray that his soul may rest in peace and of course rise in glory, and our prayers and thoughts are obviously with his family, especially his children, at this time of grief. Now to move on to another issue. I always talk about some of our Guyanese. Sometimes their ways are very unscrupulous, and we still have people doing these things in society. For example, months ago, sometime last year, the First Lady, Her Excellency Mrs. Sandra Granger, she was forced to come out and remind people to be very aware of these unscrupulous persons in our society. And it seems that it's starting all over again. A journalist called me 2 days ago to ask me if the First Lady is giving out scholarships, because apparently these unscrupulous persons now have taken to calling the media to tell them that they're basically begging for money on the false pretense. So what I'm going to do now is read another quick release from the Ministry of the Presidency, and of course this is on behalf of the Office of the First Lady. The Office of the First Lady has been informed that residents of Georgetown and other areas across the country have been approached via telephone calls and text messages with requests for payment in exchange for scholarships. In the light of this, First Lady Mrs. Sandra Granger wishes to again reiterate that her office does not offer scholarships and would not request cash from private citizens. Addressing the issue during an exclusive interview on Thursday, the First Lady urged citizens to remain vigilant for anyone using her office or her name to approach people with the proposition of down payments for scholarships. And to quote the First Lady herself, several statements were issued by my office and Ministry of the Presidency on social media and in the local media, advising people that my office has absolutely no access to scholarships. All scholarships offered by the government are offered through the Department of Public Service, and you should be aware of this by now. If you are informed that you are to get a scholarship, check it out and call and find out. This means you must contact the Department of Public Service. Mrs. Granger also lamented the fact that individuals are taking advantage of citizens' vulnerabilities. To use her words, these crooks are taking advantage of the naivety and the sensitivities of the people they are approaching. It is really a scam of the worst order, because people are taking advantage of other people's vulnerabilities. These people are going from one extreme to the next to make easy money out of vulnerable people, the First Lady added. Just last April, a fraudster, Mr. Muhammad Ali, was arrested and placed before the court for impersonating the First Lady and tricking citizens into transferring money to him. The trickster managed to obtain 12 pennyweights of gold, worth $139,000, of course that's Guyana dollars, and $30,000 worth in GT&T and Digicel phone cards, while pretending that he was in the position to grant scholarships to a young woman. Mr. Ali has since been prosecuted and jailed. So that is just to remind you of what can happen if you continue to be unscrupulous. And people, and this is me directly, we cannot be so naive in today's world. I can't understand why people are still handing over their valuables and finances just basically on a whim without fact checking and first checking and second checking. Come on, people, we have to try to be a little more aware of what is going on in our society. We don't like it. It is not fair, but unfortunately that's how life is. So we need to, the onus is on us to ensure that we're aware and alert of what is going on. What I'm going to do now, we still have some more time left on Facing the Nation. You also know that one of the other programs I do is called West Side Story, where we go into the communities to see what development works are happening. And we recorded one earlier this week. I'm not sure we're going to be able to show it in its entirety. But of course, this is Facing the Nation. Take a look at some of what's happening in Region 3. And by the time I come back, it will be time to wrap up today's program. Stay tuned.